Hello! Today there's much excitement because we have a box from our friends at HGLRC and it is a new quad called the RaceWhoop 30. Before I get out of the box, I must tell you just to prepare yourself because I've got the version called the mixed colour. This is available in a variety of colours, but if you have the mixed colour, they sort of throw it together in all sorts of ways. This is very interesting and I'll tell you why. This will look like what was all the rage, the Cinewhoop. People kept buying Cinewhoops and I was always a little bit surprised because I was like, there's only a certain amount of people that will be using these for their intended purpose, which would be to carry a GoPro around areas where you wouldn't be able to fly because of safety reasons. People tended to buy them because they looked at them and said, oh, that's good, if I knock into things it'll just bounce off and I won't break it. But they were so heavy, noisy and flew pretty badly that it was really a bad decision to get them. They also had overheating problems. But what HGLC have done is basically build a quad where they say this is good for bashing into things. You can use it as a Cinewhoop, certainly. You can use it to race. They've said it's good for light freestyle. I think they say light freestyle because where you've got these ducts, it's never going to be quite as manoeuvrable as something without them. But what they've basically done is taken away some of those extra bits that you'd have in the Cinewhoop. They've got the weight down. So they think this will basically fly really nicely and you can bash in things, not break it, which sounds like a good thing. I also noticed, if you look at the back, you can probably see it, they've got these newer 5-bladed props, which are supposed to be much quieter. Quite an impressive spec on this. There is a 4S and a 6S version. This is the 6S version, so it's got 2800 kV motors and the 4S has 3600 kV motors. So it's built around the sort of 3-inch quad once again. It's got one of their Zeus F7 flight controllers on there and the Caddx Ratel 2 camera at the front. I love the Caddx Ratel, it was my favourite camera of all time. Some really nice touches on this as well. Firstly, I noticed you can put this in the box, it's fully ready to go, and you can take it out of the box and there's no like extra screwing antennas and stuff, it will always go back in the box. There is a tiny hammer VTX antenna there. This is the FreeSky version, so it's got an XM Plus here. They also do Crossfire, R9, FlySky and ELRS as well. I ended up with FreeSky by default, but no big deal. Another really lovely touch on here is you've got the Type-C USB connector right there. Normally these things, especially this sort of thing, you had to have this 90-degree USB adapter which would bend and break. They've just popped it there, which is really cool. I'll show you what else is in the box. A spare set of props, some fixings, screws and stuff, a larger bolt and nut which is, I'm presuming, for this GoPro style mount here. But if you don't want to put a GoPro on, they also include this little shark fin which would go there. And they said this is much better for turtle mode, so if it lands upside down it's going to be able to turn over a lot easier with that thing there. Battery strap, of course, 2 battery straps in fact. XM Plus instructions, some documentation on the F722 Mini that's installed, a card about flying safe, some stickers and a little note on propeller direction. So this is a props out configuration. Not that it should matter because you've got them enclosed, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm going to get that up on Betaflight now, see what I need to configure, see where it is at the moment, and then we'll be able to take it out and try flying it. Before we go to Betaflight, I just wanted to show a couple of interesting features and just show you around the quad. As I mentioned, that's the USB-C connector. Now, one interesting thing, because the USB-C connector comes up there, and we've got a very thin section here, the battery strap's going to actually have to go this way, meaning the battery's going to sort of go that way, which is, it shouldn't make a difference, it's just slightly unusual compared to what we're used to. This has the XM Plus, and you can just get this through here to bind it. This obviously comes with this mount here for the antennas, but you've got the one circular one there which you'd probably be able to put through the sort of the T antenna, which would come with things like the Crossfire or Tracer or ELRS or anything else like that. Also at the back here we've got 2 LEDs and a beeper. I've still got the cover on the beeper, which it always curiously says remove after washing. Quite why you'd be washing a beeper, I don't know. The other thing I wanted to point out, and what was quite interesting about this, is the way the motors are configured. If you turn it upside down, you'll see the motors are mounted facing downwards, so they're going to be pushers, which is interesting. You don't see that very often. The 5-bladed props there, obviously. I was just slightly concerned about if this is down in the grass, then there's not much clearance there. Are these little ducts going to be absolutely covered in green stains very quickly or not? I think that'll certainly be an interesting
thing to consider there, or let's see what happens really. Anyway, let's get on to the Betaflight and see what's already been set up.
Okay, so let's hook this up to Betaflight. Now I just very quickly bound the receiver so it would make more sense, hopefully, and we seem to be in okay. I'm not on a very flat surface here, so it kind of looks all over the place, but that looks pretty much set. So ports wise, yeah, serial RX is set. We got IRC Tramp. We've still got 3 UARTs. That's the good thing about having an F7. So if you want to hook anything else up, you want to replace the receiver with something like Crossfire ELRS, or you want to put a GPS on as well, you've got space to do that, which is nice. Configuration wise, as mentioned, it's a reversed prop. D-Shot 600 running an 8K loop. I'll be adding motor stop as per normal, changing the craft name, but nothing much to do there. It all looks pretty much set up. LED strip is set. It's got those 2 LEDs on the back there. Nice, all good so far. It's got some D-Shot beacon config, although it does have its own beeper, as we noticed there. Yep, that all looks fine. PID tuning, doesn't look like there's much changes made there. It's very rare that I have to do much with the latest Betaflight. I mean, this isn't latest, this is running 4.2.0 and 4.2.9 at the time I'm putting this out. I think it's the latest. But rates, yeah, that's pretty much default. And filters, can't tell if that's default because I never go near it. Receiver wise, we have got an XM Plus in this. You can see aux12 wiggling around, so we've obviously got RSI set. My radio is connected and moving. I just need to do some sub trim work there. You can see the quad's kind of drifting because it's not accurate at the moment. Modes comes with arm, angle and air mode all on the one switch set up there, which is kind of interesting. I'll be putting all my normal stuff in. Motors we're not expect to see much. And OSD, how's it look? Yeah, alright. It looks like it's put things kind of right in the middle of the screen instead of on the pure ends, which I prefer. But yeah, be tidying that up. Finally, the VTX, yep, goes up to 350 milliamp hours. That's about it really. Pretty nicely set up. Almost ready to fly. I just need to go change my personal bits, and then we'll get a weather day and get out there and let's see how this thing does. Okay, welcome to the field for testing. Not the most exciting place to test, but at least we've got, you know, things to fly along and see what the footage looks like. I'm going to take this camera I'm filming with and shove it in there. It's going to be my GoPro 7, and I've got the 6S battery loaded, and yeah, let's see how this thing flies. So what I gave you there is a little flavour of the noise recording from the GoPro. Now these are supposed to be quieter with the 5 bladed props. In my opinion, you know, I can't tell if they're a little bit quieter. They still seem really loud, like annoyingly loud, like the people 2 fields over are going to come and complain that this incredibly noisy thing is going on. Leaving that aside, how's it feel? Well, at the moment, and I started off flying it very sort of gently in what I call Cinewhoop mode. So we're just sort of going along, trying to get something a little bit cinematic happening. Now, what I've done, I've included the GoPro footage as the main screen with the OSD recording just in the corner there. So you can see the slight difference. You can see that there's some little, very minor wobbles and little corrections that happen in the OSD that you don't see in the GoPro footage, because that sort of smooths stuff out with hyper smooth. Now what I did notice quite quickly is in a turning with the full-size GoPro, I felt the nose could drop down a bit. It took me a little while to sort of figure this bit out, and I don't think I did immediately. And you really need to give it more throttle, and I didn't get this for quite a while. You see me just doing a very sort of casual little flip there, just seeing how it feels. It feels okay, but it kind of feels slightly out of balance with that GoPro. Whenever I did something a little bit more intense in a maneuver, it felt like the quad was kind of pulling, and you could hear it in the sort of noises it made, like the motors were spinning up when I thought they wouldn't have to, because I was kind of more on zero throttle, but there was a lot of noise from the motors as they were trying to hold their position. As far as everything else goes though, it's flying really quite nicely. We're at 25 milliwatts because I wanted to see how well the VTX would do. That's doing pretty good. I didn't go out too far because I'm only on an XM Plus receiver, which I haven't used for a while, and they are very different to things like ELRS. They're sort of, it's got an RSSI indicator that actually goes down, and it's like, that's weird. This is not what I'm used to. Picture from the camera. Really happy. We've got the Ratel 2 here, and yeah, it's living up to the reputation of the first one, getting some really nice footage there. You can see that the GoPro tends to get quite a bit of lens flare when going into the sun, which the FPV camera doesn't, which is quite nice. Now, I did manage to eventually crash this, but not in the way I thought. I mean, I wanted to kind of bump it into things to see how it would do. And I figured if it was going to be it'd be going through this little gap, maybe scraping a couple of branches, but that didn't happen. And it kind of goes back to this thing when you do a big turn and that nose drops forward, that you need to use an awful lot of throttle to get out of it. And I got sort of caught slightly out by this one. And it happened here as I was coming down, and I wanted to make a sort of big turn here towards myself. The nose kind of drops, and I have to pull back a bit. And I do the same thing. I do a big turn here, and it drops down, and I sort of overcorrect myself, and that took me out. It was pretty much at the end of the first battery, so I thought, you know what, let's forget that for now, and we'll go ahead and do some more. So on the second battery, I wanted to test that out a little bit more. I've upped the milliwatts to 200, and I wanted to throw it around a little bit more, see if I could get the hang of it. And the answer is not immediately. This is going to take a little while to get the hang of when you're flying with essentially a weight at the front. It definitely does throw the balance off. It's not something you can't get used to. It just feels very different than the normal quads I was flying on the day, and that was definitely putting me out of my comfort zone a little bit. If you fly it like a Cinewhoop, it's fine. If you fly it like an Acro quad with that GoPro at the front, you're gonna have some problems you're gonna need to deal with. Essentially, you have to kind of learn to treat the throttle a little bit differently and just be ready to really push it at certain places. So I really didn't push any sort of range, as I mentioned before. I think the max we got was maybe around 300-400 meters, which seems like a fine distance to go in this sort of quad. Of course, if you go with the ERS version or the Crossfire or something like that, you've essentially got more range than you'd ever want to handle. I did want to obviously check that the VTX didn't have any sort of problems. That seems to hold up nice, and we get a nice picture there. The GoPro is definitely giving a truer reflection of the image. There's a little touch redness in the Ratel here, but it's still something where I can easily tell where I'm going and see what's what, so I'm not really fussed about it not being the most truest colour ever. So after these couple of batteries, I decided to bring it in and have a little bit of a rethink about how I was flying it.
So aside from some of the greenery you notice we've collected over those crashes, I'm going to just give it a quick go without the GoPro, and I can't take the mount out because it's pretty much locked in there, but it seems a bit heavy and off balance as I'm trying to fly it with a bit of freestyle. So let's try taking some of this weight off here. I'll have to leave that on, of course, and just see if it's any better.
So yeah, whilst we were sat on the floor there, of course the VTX heated up a lot, and it feels an awful lot better without that weight at the front. You can definitely throw it around a little bit more, and it's happier. I'm still getting this situation where when I sort of go upside down and expect it to float in a certain way, it can sort of correct over. I guess this is the wind taking it, and then the motor sort of spinning up and trying to hold its attitude as it was. It's just something to be aware of, that this thing can get brushed around by the wind. Definitely a lot better, a lot more happier to do Acro when we haven't got the GoPro on there. So that's definitely good news to people that are sort of wanting to fly it as less of a Cinewhoop and more of a sort of let's learn how to fly and not worry too much about crashing it. The VTX as well does have its own microphone. That sound you heard at the beginning was the raw recording from that, and it's not too bad. I don't listen with headphones, but you've got something at least that you can listen with. But I wasn't quite done. I didn't feel I'd properly tested out the robustness of the frame. Could it deal with crashes? I put it in the ground a couple of times, but that really doesn't do anything. So the next day I went out to fly in the woods. This is where I'd sort of maybe take toothpicks and whoops and sort of throw them around the trees. Not normally a quad this big, so I thought it'd be a good test. There's lots of scraggle and stuff like that, and I thought, yeah, this will be a good place to try it out. And I sort of got caught out in weirdest places, just sort of going along, and I thought, oh, I didn't notice that there. So I'd gone through the sort of V-tree gap once the other direction, that was fine, but I seem to have forgotten this quad's a little bit bigger than the other ones. But yeah, it's not a problem, it just bounced off, didn't do anything to the prop, so that was all good. That's exactly the sort of thing I was looking to test here. Other than that, I seem to be completely unable to hit any bit of scraggle or anything. Maybe it's just not the season to have all these little bits and bobs about. So let's bring it on home and we'll try much harder to hit stuff on battery number 2. Now, I didn't show much of that first flight through the woods because it was fairly uneventful, but what I had done is finally sort of figured out the way I needed to treat the throttle going into turns. It's kind of just this thing that clicked and I was like, oh yeah, if I just do that it will be better. So I was a lot more confident about hitting things with a little bit more speed and just having a bit more of a blast around the woods. Now, people sometimes ask me about how do you figure out where you're going around the woods because they all do look the same. And that's true. There's a little bit of a path that I can kind of see and a couple of other paths that I stick to. But if you're ever lost and flying through the woods, use your ears. Now, on this sort of quad, it's not a problem. It's so loud. Just listen to the direction it's in, and if you're flying, is the noise getting louder or softer? And that's when you know if you're coming towards yourself, and obviously if the noise is coming from the right or left, you know kind of which side you're on. And if you do that, it will get you back to a place where you'll be able to pick up the trail again. It's what I've used many times. It sounds very basic, but it kind of works. So we just had another hit there, and that would have completely taken out a regular quad with props on view. So that's pretty good. And I'm sort of testing here to see how well the VTX holds up through the trees. And you know, it does a pretty good job. We get deep enough in here to the fact where I'm saying, you know, I don't want to walk that far if it goes down here. So I think I'll just turn it round this tree and come on back, because you're never quite sure how the pitch is going to be on the way back. And given that its little VTX antenna is quite hidden away, it seems quite blocked, I think it does a pretty good job here. Didn't really experience any problems on the VTX at all. And yeah, this is the kind of stuff I like, just flying through the wood like this without a particular care in the world. Of course, this is all going to come unstuck. I absolutely set out to see what it could take, and once again I got myself in a position where I managed to screw things up. What happened is I hit some stuff here, not a problem, I managed to get out of that, but on the way back I then hit another big one and went down. And I thought, you know what, why don't we try turtle mode? We've got it, I just flick it over and I can go again. And you can see this is not just leaves on the ground, there's twigs and branches, and if you listen to this noise and you can see it in the vibrations, something is definitely wrong. The act of putting the props on the floor like that means basically I've done something bad to it. Now initially when I got it back and looked at it, I thought, you know what, it's just a bunch of little twigs and leaves. Somehow I didn't notice, but if you look at the green duct, there's actually 2 blades missing there. So I actually took off with this and thought, no, this is still really bad, what's going on? And that's when I finally noticed the problem, that I'd lost 2 blades of the prop. it managed to limp home on the free okay, but obviously it unbalanced it, and you can see the amount of dirt and grime we've basically got here. So yeah, don't turtle mode unless you know exactly what's on the floor.
Now usually in all cases I'm testing out a new quad, I'm always taking spare props with me just in case. With this guy I decided not to, and then of course I break a prop. Here it is now after the repair, and as it turned out I wouldn't have had the tools. That's because they use these little prop adapters, and almost every quad you'll see, whether it be 5" or 3" uses an 8mm nut, so you would need an 8mm socket. This uses 4mm, which I didn't have with me at the time, but I've got one that I now keep in the bag. Anyway, I ended up changing all the props because they all had little nicks taken out of them, all because of that turtle maneuver. Basically I'd gone over and I'd spanned the props up on stuff, essentially little stones, little twigs, the leaves not so much, but although they're sort of little and light, as soon as they start bashing around the props they're going to take little nicks out of them. So these are all new, so just be very wary that when you turtle mode you are basically exposing your props to whatever's there. If it's just grass, it's not really a problem, it's going to turn green and stuff, but you're going to take off. Yeah, so this is after the event. You'll notice as well all the ducts are nice and clean, just a sort of damp cloth pushing around there will get rid of that. It cleaned up quite nicely. The only lasting thing we had is this little, if you can see that, a little green smudge there. I think that's where that hit the V of the tree, so a nice little lasting effect. But the rest of it's looking absolutely good and ready to fly again. So in conclusion, what do I think of this? Well, I don't like the colour scheme, but fortunately you can get it in different colours. Lots of stuff I like about it, not least of which is the USB connector here. Why has nobody else done that? It's such an obvious thing to do, but it works so great. Lots of stuff in this work very well. It flies pretty smoothly, it's got a great camera, the VTX is good despite having this tiny little antenna there. All good. I don't like the noise. It's a little bit obnoxious. It's still really loud. Whether it's quieter than a regular Cinewhoop, perhaps it is, but it's like, you know, jet versus racing car difference. It's still loud, and that's my only word of warning. So if you want to get this and sort of learn to fly and not have to worry about bashing the props into things, don't have the GoPro on, that's fine, but you'll need to fly in an area where you're not going to have people. If you go to a local park and start flying this around, you're going to get like an angry mob essentially chasing you off because it's that loud. It is really very conspicuous indeed. If you're in your own field, your own massive area where you don't have that issue, you're not going to have a problem, and you're always going to know where it is because you'll be able to hear it no matter how far away it is. And that's what I say, if you're going to want to learn to fly in this, or you want something that you're not worried about bashing into things, that's fine. It's never going to fly as good as something without ducks on it. Bear that in mind. It's going to have issues with the wind blowing it around and fighting that sometimes. And if you're going to do it, don't put a GoPro on front. Mount up the little shark fin. That'll help you turn over if you really want to, and you'll have a good time. Now, if you are going to use it as a Cinewhoop, putting a full-size GoPro on is absolutely fine, but you'll just need to root it around gently, which is kind of what you do with a Cinewhoop. I think this will benefit more from a naked GoPro or an Insta Go style camera because it's a lot lighter. It's just that tip as you come round is what you always get. But again, you can learn to fly around that. It's just a little bit different from other quads. So yeah, overall it's a very interesting thing. You can absolutely fly it like a Cinewhoop and get some nice footage. I got, I think, pretty good footage from my little GoPro 7 there. And if you want to learn on it and bash into things, then you can do. I will always say, no matter what, that having a regular quad without the ducks is nicer to fly and is more beneficial to learning. But if you're going to keep cracking it into stuff and you're getting fed up at changing your props every 2 minutes, then this isn't a bad situation either, and a lot better than flying your regular Cinewhoop, which is much too heavy and stuff. As far as the motors go, I didn't really have any heating problems. I was flying on 1050 6S's and got about 4 minutes with the big GoPro on, and that seemed pretty good, although I wasn't really pushing it too hard. So there you go, this has been the HGLRC RaceWhoop 30 and was kindly supplied for review by HGLRC, so many thanks to them. And of course you can find more details in the description below about where you can check it out. Hope that review's been helpful, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.